Vernon Hall, Chapter 9, The Embalment. I paid Hugo handsomely, and the scoundrel accepted the bribe with a smirk on his loathsome face. He showed no sympathy for Amelia. It was as if he were devoid of human emotion. His reason for existence appeared to be money and money only. He returned later that evening with an embalmer. He was a mysterious-looking man, middle-aged with a hunched back, and he wore glasses on the tip of his nose and carried a suitcase. I will need the body to be kept in a secluded room where I am not to be disturbed. As you are my employer, you may observe the procedure. That is, if you have the courage to. So, is there any such room in this castle? He narrowed his dark eyes, and the only room I could think of that was cut off from the rest of the house was that dreadful dungeon. I was left with no choice. I instructed the chef to carry Amelia's body into the dungeon. My instructions were obeyed, but I could clearly see the horror on everyone's faces, the worried glances all the servants exchanged, the tension in their troubled eyes. Once Amelia's body was placed on the stone bench in the dungeon, I escorted the embalmer there. He opened the suitcase and removed various instruments and tools I had never seen in my life. But then I had led a very sheltered life, and I had little knowledge of medicine or science altogether. Are you sure you're brave enough to witness this marvel? I nodded, expressionless. The truth is, I wasn't brave enough to see what was about to happen. But if it meant Amelia's body was not going to decompose, and that she would remain inside Vernon Hall, close to me, well then, that is all I wanted. Yes, it would be a marvel. The embalmer wore gloves and a mask on his face. He first cut off Amelia's clothes with scissors, bit by bit. Though I felt embarrassed and a little uncomfortable for a man to see her this way, I stood powerless and patient. He procured 2 bottles from his bag and began pouring their contents over her body. This is a disinfectant solution. The body needs to be cleansed before the procedure can begin, he explained. He then applied a sort of liquid adhesive to her eyes and closed her delicate eyelids, which were partially open. This will hold the eyelids in place. The next phase of this procedure horrified me, yet I maintained my composure. The embalmer inserted a needle connected to a lengthy tube into Amelia's vein. I will now have to drain her blood. Do you have the stomach for it? I maintained my composure and simply nodded, emotionless. He then commenced draining her blood, and little by little the receptacle filled to the brim. Once all the blood had been drained from Amelia's body, he removed the needle and pipes. He then inserted another needle into her arteries and connected it to what appeared to be a pump. I'm now injecting a chemical through her arteries. Once the chemical was successfully injected, the embalmer made a small incision in Amelia's abdomen with a sharp surgical instrument. I shall now drain the abdomen of any gas and fluid contents, he explained. All the while, he explained the harrowing procedure step by step, very scientifically, devoid of emotion. It appeared as if he carried out this procedure every day. He injected more chemicals into the abdomen and sutured her body. He then took a pouch from his suitcase and removed a brush and some powder. He brushed Amelia's face with the powder until all the lines on her face and dark eye circles vanished. Several hours had passed, and finally he exclaimed, "There! It's done." I was standing a short distance from the bench, but once the procedure was over, I came forward, close to Amelia's body. She looked the same as she had in life. I quickly covered her exposed body with a sheet. I then proceeded upstairs, and the embalmer followed. I finally breathed as though I had emerged from a tomb. The embalmer accepted his payment, then asked Hugo to drop him back at his abode. I instructed two of the parlour maids to remove the receptacle from the dungeon. They would have fainted had I not assisted them in removing the container filled with Amelia's blood. It was nearly midnight, and the servants were exhausted and stricken. I asked them to retire for the night, but I stayed in that macabre dungeon all night long beside Amelia, falling asleep during intervals, only to be awoken by horrific dreams of Amelia crying in pain. The next morning, I wrote to the local coffin maker and specified the type of casket I wanted, one with a glass window at the front. Hugo went to collect it. The casket arrived and was deposited in the dungeon. Finally, Amelia's body was placed in the casket, and I saw her beautiful face through the glass. This is what I wanted, to have her by my side, to never part with her, to preserve her as she was. As I sat beside her all night long in the dungeon, unable to keep my eyes open, I now saw a light streaming through the stained glass window. I was exhausted. It set the serpent ablaze. It seemed alive and slithered down the wall in my direction. I was in a realm of morbid horrors, and I collapsed.